Hello, hello, beautiful people. As you can see, I don't have a background and I don't have any makeup on. I have evacuated to a different room because of the heat. Um, and I like to do reaction videos. I really do. But that's not all I really want to do. So I've decided to flesh out a little bit today, and I'm gonna talk about something else. Today, because of the heat wave, I've decided to discuss some tips and tricks for saving money and the environment during a heat wave, at least in the US. I'm not sure how relevant this is outside the US. I think it depends where you are. Air conditioning is kind of normal in America, and depending on where in the country you are, how necessary it's thought to be. Uh, in the part of the country I live, we have fairly extreme winters, and we also have fairly extreme summers. And right now, there's a heat wave that's dangerous to people kind of all over the world in the northern hemisphere right now, killing people left and right all over the place. Uh, so I'm aware of the issues with the environment and air conditioning, but I'm also aware that I have rabbits. Rabbits can't take heat. They kind of live underground, you know. Moving underground is not an option right now. One of my goals that I thought about doing, and I tried it for about a year, was, setting up the basement kind of like an apartment. And during the extreme months of the winter and the summer, to move myself and my fur babies down to warmer slash cooler areas. I've got a wood stove down there and stuff for the winter. I learned from my mistakes. One, my basement is a little bit wet. Uh, I had some of the problems for that fixed, but there's some other things I need to do. I have a leak in the plumbing down there that I've got a bad one. I've got circumvented right now until I can get it fixed. And so the moisture was a problem. It wasn't healthy. And then as far as the heating in the winter, um, I bought a barrel stove. I thought I was gonna save some money putting in a, a wood stove situation. Um, I had a large tree, collapse. It has some kind of a disease called heart rot, and collapsed into my yard. Well, actually, it went and landed in the neighbor's yard, but part of it affected me, and I cut that up, and I was like, man, I have all this wood because this thing was over 30 feet long and lots of limbs coming off of it. And I thought, man, that's a lot of firewood. Well, you have to dry it out first. So I found some ways to try to get it to dry faster, and that probably did help. But I bought a barrel stove, and it's a horizontally assembled barrel stove. It's not vertical. I don't know if vertical would be better. I guess it would, because the reviews that people were giving for heating their house with one that was all vertically positioned, the one I bought was already assembled and it's horizontally positioned. And it goes through way too much wood. I mean, it's either going to be roasting hot down there and consuming the wood at a ridiculous rate, or it's going to be too low and put out too much smoke, which is bad for the environment and bad for the house because it creates enough smoke that you can smell it. And it doesn't heat things very well. It creates a little bit of heat inside the barrel and not in the rest of the room. So, and then it goes out pretty fast. Especially if it's windy out, and the wind comes down the chimney and puts the stupid thing out. Um, so it was very, very, very unfruitful and disappointing. There, I guess if you have a regular, decent kind of fireplace or wood stove, and then you're willing to pay about twice as much as I did, I would have, if I had it to do over again, I would have gone ahead and charged twice as much on my credit card, and I probably could have paid it off with the money in a few months with the money that I saved on the power bill, using wood that I had anyway, that you need to destroy that wood by fire anyway, because the disease the tree has is contagious, and it's a fungal disease, and you're either going to contaminate the environment hideously with chemicals, or you're going to dry it out and burn it and kill it off that way. And the less moving it you do, the less opportunity the disease has to spread. And so, that was a really brilliant idea I had there, to use something that had to be destroyed by fire, and that was right there on the lot, instead of, you know, having mining and some questionable practices used to extract gas, probably in Alaska, and messing up the lives of indigenous populations up there, um, and having it piped down here, and then it's a fossil fuel and all that, and then having to pay an arm and a leg for that, and then also having to pay an arm and a leg to have the wood hauled off and having it moved, which is creating opportunity for a deadly, incurable tree disease to spread. That, yeah. So, I mean, except the fact that I bought the wrong stove, it was a good idea. Don't buy a horizontally positioned barrel stove to heat things. Now, I got on the tangent about heating things in the middle of a blasted heat wave. So, what am I doing instead of, uh, obviously, I'm not trying to heat things. Well, I have a window air conditioner, just one. And instead of trying to get a whole bunch of those and cool down the whole house, I actually have moved my rabbits, who absolutely have to be kept cool for the sake of their life, um, into just a couple of rooms. And you can see behind me that there's a red blanket hanging over that doorway. And this other door is propped open, and there's a fan blowing into it. Those two rooms are both cut off by blankets hanging on things, or by doors when there's a door hanging there. And if there's a gap between the floor and the door, I got something shoved underneath there. Allergies. So it's actually, the trouble is, this one. Come here, Penny. Come here, baby. Come here, love bug. Come here, love. Penny. Penny. Well, you can't see her, but this one that lives in this room, she has this awful habit of going through into the kitchen and messing up the blanket that I have hanging there. It's hot as the six shades of hell out there. I cook in there. And then she messes up the blanket, and it doesn't create the barrier it needs to. And within minutes, you can feel a difference in here. And if I go and fix that blanket, she can't go out through that one. There's a baby gate like thing over there. She sure wants to go and mess that blanket up too, doesn't she? You can see her now back there, fixing to cause trouble. In a minute, I'm going to have to go and fix that blanket, or it's going to get hot as the six shades of hell in here. Well, the other one that doesn't get along with this one, she's in the other room that is being cooled. And this fan here, um, up until recently when the heat wave hit, I didn't need this fan because it was a lot cooler in here, but it was cool enough in there for the other bunny and for me. My bed is in there. Well, it's not now. So I put this protective covering on so that Penny can't chew up this cord. Rabbits love to chew on cords. And I'm blowing the cool air into there. And as long as I keep these blankets adjusted properly, it gets cool in here. And when the temperature gets down to a reasonably, mid 70s, it's to me it's cold in here. Penny can handle it, but to me it's cold in here. And then it's sometimes even a little cold in there. But I've gotten where I just enjoy those times when I can get them. As it is, it's going to be in the upper 70s at the coolest time tonight. Um, so I've done my cooking in a room that I'm not cooling. And at night, I mean, if it's even hotter outside than it is in here with a little bit of cool from in here bleeding around the blankets, um, I'll just go ahead and leave the windows shut. If I'm cooking, I actually open the windows unless it's 100 plus degrees outside because it's not going to make any difference. But tonight it's supposed to get below 80 degrees in a little while. So well, by now it probably is. I open the windows in the kitchen to let the heat out and to let the cool in. Even though it's not a room I'm cooling, it's a room where I do any cooking that I do. In the summer, I try to stick with food I don't have to cook. I cook outside as much as I can. I have actually put a little table thing together outside and used the exterior electrical outlet and plugged my a hot plate or a microwave or um, a crock pot in out there and just and cooked outside. I might still do that. I haven't got that set up out there right now, but I've done that. Uh, Doing as much cooking outside as you can. Inside my house, I do most of my cooking in a toaster oven or the microwave, and I usually only need one burner. So I've got a hot plate, and I've got a toaster oven, a microwave. I used to have a crock pot, but it bit the dust. Um, I use the crock pot more in the winter, and I tend to set up a little area in the winter, ideally in the room I spend the most time, so that it's generating some heat. It gives off heat anyway, and it's generating heat, and I just kind of enjoy that heat, and it offsets other other heating I have to do. But since we had an El Nino this past year, so it wasn't as bad. We tend to have mild winters when we have an El Nino. This coming winter, uh, I'm not sure yet exactly what I'm going to do. This past winter, I was able to stay in these same two rooms with my rabbits, and I had a cooking area set up actually in the corner of my bedroom. I have the microwave on the bottom and the toaster oven on that and the hot plate over that and one plug behind it. And I only plug them in because of phantom energy. Uh, Whenever I only plug them in when I'm using them. And they have, and then I have a space heater that I keep by my bed uh, in areas where I want to be and I'm going to spend more time. I just heat that space more. And I have one of those oil-based radiant heaters, and I keep that next to my bed, especially if I'm ill. I'll turn it all the way up, and and that causes It causes it to be warmer wherever I'm at. And if I'm going to go work a long time in a different room, I'll bring that thing with me. I'll put it in the other room for a while. And by the time it starts to cool in the room that I'm still in, the other one's about ready for me. And I'll go in there. So I can keep the heat turned down a little bit below what's comfortable for me. Not necessarily unhealthy, but a little more. I'm a person that tends to like it more warm. I mean, I like it to be in the 70s. I don't like 60 something degree weather, inside or outside. So those are ways that I get around having to heat the whole house to that temperature, and eating up all of that fossil fuel and doing all that damage to the environment. My plan was to put solar on the house. I have the panels, but the rest of that hasn't materialized yet. If I had that, I would want to get an electric furnace so I could offset the heat that way, but as a backup from my wood stove. But I'd have to get a different wood stove first, like I said. So those are some tips and tricks that I'm using to keep the bills down and to keep it more manageable and to not have to buy uh I'm not rich, so I don't really have money to throw around buying window air conditioners for every room, and or trying to put in something to cool the entire house when I spend more of my time in just a couple of rooms. I actually have probably more house. I could probably handle one of those efficiency houses pretty well. I used to live in little efficiency apartments pretty well. So I basically made an efficiency apartment out of a couple rooms in my house. And when there's extreme temperatures, and I'm like, I don't think I can handle these bills, and or I don't really want to mess up the environment to try to fix this, I live in an efficiency apartment in my house. Um, it doesn't take that much getting used to if you're used to living in those. But even if it doesn't, I find most of the things that you want to do, you probably spend more time in just a couple of rooms anyway. If you have those, rearrange your house. Some people can't stand to leave, and I'm one of them, that you can't stand to leave all of your furniture and stuff set up the same way for years and years and years on end anyway. It starts to feel like it's too boring. And I'm not as extreme with that as I used to be, but I still like to change things up. So it works for me to just rearrange stuff a couple times a year. And as far as the extreme weather goes, my setup is the same. I except for having the microwave and the toaster oven and stuff in a different, where I put that is basically the only thing I have to change at this point, because everything else is pretty well set for these crazy times of year. And when the about 4 weeks out of the year total, I think, normally, that this area has really nice weather, um, I can take those blankets down and I start doing more things in other parts of the house. Um, but it's kind of pointless for me to have a almost 900 square foot house, because I don't use that much of it. I mean, I use a lot of it for storage um, for things that I don't use that often, or for things that I'm going to do later. Um, and I have a lot of projects to go on to, but ultimately, I'm probably going to get out of here and I would probably do fine in an RV full time. And that's going to be my goal. And I'd probably just move to whatever the best weather is most of the time. Dreams. Okay, speaking of dreams, you guys have really sweet dreams, and hopefully some aspect of my rambling tale of how I manage extreme weather in this extreme climate that I really don't like is beneficial to somebody dealing with extreme weather. Have a good night.